Good evening to everybody. So, another Wednesday night, another Aaron night. It's good to see you all. With no preamble, I'm just going to give Aaron the body and let him speak. My blessings and love to you all. I am Aaron. Thank you for being with me tonight. The live ones in the room and the ones on the screen who are no less alive, just hearing it at a distance. Miracles your technology gives us. Usually, the week before Thanksgiving, I give a talk on gratitude. What else? I think most of you do not fully understand the enormous richness of gratitude. It changes everything. You say, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And you're grateful. But your heart is not fully engaged in it. Let me precede my talk with a question for you. My voice sometimes is louder, sometimes softer. I want to be sure you can hear me. If any of you cease to be able to hear me, please put your hand out like this. Give me a warning. Okay? If I don't see this, I will understand that you are hearing me. I'm especially directing this to Corey, who does not hear perfectly. But I want to make sure that you're getting it. A very common experience for many of you is resentment. Things are not quite the way you want them to be. You have resentment. Somebody else has more than you. You may feel happy for them, but you also have resentment. The line doesn't move as quickly as you want, and you're in a rush. Resentment. Resentment is a statement of, I don't like it this way. I want it to be a different way. When there is resentment, your energy field closes. Your heart closes. And it may be mild resentment. I'm not talking here about strong dislike, but the undercurrent that goes through so many of your days. A touch here, a touch there, resentment. Gratitude is the opposite of resentment. Gratitude heals resentment. Resentment obviously has many parts. Fear that your needs won't be met. Greed. Non-understanding. Not seeing the big picture. These all feed resentment. I tell you very often, that which is aware of, in this case, resentment, is not feeling resentment. That awareness, that clear space in you, is not resentment. Opening in the heart to yourself first. One notes, breathing in, I am aware of resentment. Breathing out, I hold space for the resentment. So the first the word is not rule, but the first suggestion here is not to be angry at yourself when resentment arises, simply to note it. Here is resentment. And then the thought, in this moment, in this present situation, for what can I be grateful? You all know, most of you know at least, that Barbara's husband, Hal, had a very serious stroke 20 months ago. He's in a nursing home. She had a long meeting yesterday morning at the nursing home about what next for Hal. His physical therapist came, not in the building, from another facility where he is driven for his therapy. The doctor, rehab doctor who's been attending him came. The social worker, the head of physical therapy at his facility. 2 or 3 other people, I don't even know who they were. And somebody to sign for Barbara, a friend to sign. After 18 months of physical therapy, it is called Medicare, your Medicare services determined he wasn't moving fast enough. So they cut him off. The meeting was to determine what next, because if he's cut off and simply lies in bed all day, he will deteriorate. He needs to be up and moving. He has much less physical pain when he's moving. He needs far less pain medication when he's moving. They had determined that after this meeting, the physical therapist from the outer agency was going to go to Hal's room with 3 of the care team and teach them how to help him stand up, which she's been teaching them in her office, but now he can't go back to her office. Teach them how to help him stand up, pivot, and sit in a chair. For this, they were going to lend him a comfortable chair in his room. If it was successful, she was going to be able to buy a comfortable recliner chair. It was all set up. She had 3 people coming at 10 o'clock after the meeting. The physical therapist was there. Hal expected this to happen. She came into the meeting and they said, oh, by the way, I've been checking with our rules, laws, whatever they may be, and we cannot permit this because of liability. You cannot teach your team to stand him up. She said, then what's going to happen to him? They said, either you will have to bring him home if you want to stand him up, or he will have to lie in a bed. We cannot have him standing up here. She was very angry, close to tears. Her friend who was signing for her said she managed it very well. She did not, but it took everything she had to stay present and look at the anger and the resentment. How do I help him? She loves this man. And mentally, he's all there. He reaches out a hand to her when she walks in the room. His face lights up. He smiles. He brings her into a big hug. He was very excited about the idea of getting a chair in his room and being able to get up more. So, resentment. Heart closed, energy field closed. Barbara decided to hear what they had to say, what they had to suggest. And they really didn't have much at all to suggest. Just, we're sorry. And if you want to plan to bring him home, then a few weeks before you bring him home, we can do that training here because it's for a purpose. It could be 6 months, a year from now. But for now, no. She looked at the people. I had to nudge her a bit. She looked at the people in the room, and she said to each one, thank you. I know you have Hal's best interests at heart, and I know you cannot break rules for him. I understand that if you had your choice, you would allow it. Thank you. How can we handle this for Hal's good? Once she opened up, they all opened up. The whole room opened up. And instead of them being a force saying no to her, and her being angry at the no, they all were able to work together to figure out how to work this out for his benefit. He cannot be trained, the staff there cannot be trained to lift him and transfer him. It's what they call a no-lift facility, where they use a lift. He's in a hammock, like sling, that lifts him up out of bed and over to a chair. Obviously, he gets no exercise that way. He's still sitting. And they cannot put a chair in his room, a comfortable chair, unless he can stand up and move himself to it. Catch 22. They started to brainstorm. They said, if you bring him home, you can do whatever you want. But Barbara can't bring him home. She can't physically care for him. He needs 24/7 nursing care. But then the idea came up. She has what she calls a care team. Different people she has hired who come into the nursing home to spend time with him. Those people can come to the house. One can go to the nursing home and get him up out of bed, take him on a ride to the house here. Barbara will buy the recliner chair for the house. The physical therapist said, I'll be happy to come to your house and teach them how to do it, just as a volunteer. Not paid, just volunteering her energy. Everybody is excited about the plan, including Hal, who will now get to come home for 3 or 4 hours every day. Sit in a comfortable chair, have a nice lunch at home, watch the news or whatever it is on TV, stand up and sit down and do his exercises with his team, do his speech exercises with his team. But he can do it here in a lovely environment. Getting him out of the institution for 3 to 6 hours a day. It never could have come to this if she had held on to the resentment, that welling up of gratitude, and it was honest gratitude. Yes, I had to give her a little nudge, but once she caught on to what I was saying and looked at each person and said, thank you for the care you're taking of her, and her heart opened, and then the ideas began to flow because the energy was no longer constricted. This opening of energy with gratitude is rather miraculous. I'd like you all to pause here for a minute and think of something for which you presently have been feeling resentment. It could be anything. You're sick and feeling resentful of the illness. Your neighbor got a new car and you want the car or a car like it. Resentment because your roof is leaking. Resentment because you feel you don't get your fair share of things, or because nobody appreciates you. Just stop and reflect on this resentment. Can you feel how your energy is constricted when you think of the resentment? Can you feel that? Yes, no. Can you feel it? No.
Yeah.
Now, a few spiritual laws. Everything in your life is a teacher. Everything. This particular set of circumstances for which you are feeling resentment is a teacher. That means that the people involved in this set of circumstances are also teachers. Perhaps unconscious teachers, but they are teachers. Spiritual law 2 that we consider here. You did not come into the incarnation for everything to go perfectly smoothly your way. For ease, for joy, much though you wanted. How would you learn? You came into the incarnation to practice loving kindness, compassion, unconditional love. Not just to practice it, but to learn to remember. This is your essence. You are love. If we take everything else away and come down to the core of your being, you are love. The rest is all simply what is arising in the incarnation because of conditions. If you're going to be in a human body, you're going to experience physical pain, emotional pain, loss, sadness. It's part of the learning curriculum because these are your inspiration to remember. Come back to the loving heart. Don't get wrapped up in the negative stories. How can you not get wrapped up in the negative stories unless there are some negative stories? How can you practice? So I understand that none of you want these kinds of negative experiences. But coming back to whatever you reflected on that aroused resentment, bring it back to your mind again and feel the contraction. And then bring your hands together, literally. Thank you, teacher. Say it again. Thank you, teacher.
Thank you, teacher.
With your hands together like this, so the energy is restored. It's really impossible to be totally contracted. Can you feel the energy movement in the hands together? Thank you, teacher.
Thank you, teacher.
Now, it's perfectly permissible to say, I don't like this. I don't want this. I wish it would go away. But nevertheless, thank you, teacher. Softening into the heart, remembering. One more spiritual law here. You are all volunteers. You came into the incarnation as a volunteer for your own healing of karma, to release the karma of fear, of ingratitude, of resentment. But even more important, as a volunteer, to help raise the whole vibrational frequency of the earth. This earth, that is your school and your home. The earth is in a very fragile is not the best word. Tippy place right now. There is a lot of love. There's a lot of negativity and fear. Think of a seesaw. You're standing right on the fulcrum, and it's going up and down and up and down. Love, fear. It starts to tip. You contract in fear, and to balance yourself, you step out toward the fear side. Contracting in fear. It tips it more that way. Whoops. Dippy, dippy, dippy. Fear. Breathing in, I am aware of the fear. Breathing in, I hold space for the fear. Thank you, fear, for coming as a teacher. Now we're tipping toward the positive side. It's up to you. You and millions of you, all there in the middle of that teeter-totter. Which way am I going to go? Which way is the whole earth going to go? Next week, you will have dinner, some of you, with a family who may be challenging people. Others of you may have dinner with friends, some of whom may be challenging people. Or the dog may eat the turkey. Who knows what will happen? As you come together for this celebration of Thanksgiving, remember that the greater the resentment, the more the heart needs to open around the situation, and that you can change everything just by noting the contraction of sadness, of fear, of anger, and saying, thank you, teacher. Once the heart starts to open, then you can thank the whole world around you. Everyone, not just some of the people, everyone. Tonight, some of you may listen to the debate on television. This is the Democrat Party debate, so the Republican candidate is not going to be there. He's the one you probably most need to practice. Thank you, teacher. Thank you, teacher. But with the Democratic candidates, some will resonate for you. Some will say, oh no, not that policy. Huh? Thank you, teacher. Thank you, teacher. You don't have to agree with the policies. The question is not about agreement. It's about opening your energy field enough to truly hear and understand. Because as long as you don't hear, as long as the heart is closed, there's separation. With separation, you cannot hear the other person at all. How well can you hear tonight for this debate? That's the first part of my talk. Now I'm going to entertain you a bit. I have two Thanksgiving stories, gratitude stories. Obviously, they have a point, but I hope you'll enjoy the story just as it is. These are past life stories for me. I lived in a land where we had what you commonly call haves and have-nots. And my people were the have-nots. We were poor. We were often hungry. People looked down on us. We were free to walk around. But because we were a different caste, we were looked down upon. I hated the upper caste. I never knew anyone of the upper caste. I had never talked to anyone of the upper caste, but I hated them because they were haves and I was a have-not. I saw the poverty around me and the suffering that grew out of that poverty. Please don't jump immediately to someplace like India with its caste system of long ago. Just leave it as don't need to know where or when this was, but a long time ago. We were not even permitted to be servants. Being of the caste that I was, I could not bring you a cup of tea. I would defile it if I touched it. I could, however, clean your bathroom. I could scrub your floors. I could eat of your garbage. Most of the people like me were angry, but we did not know what to do. We had no education. We had no means to connect with anyone of a higher caste. And we did not realize that there were some of the higher caste who disliked this caste system and wanted to get past it. There was a curfew for those of my caste. I was a boy, 17, 18, quick to understand things. I even taught myself some reading, just by looking at the various signs in the marketplace and so forth. My mother was sick, and I needed to get medicine for her. It was past curfew. I went out anyhow, hiding in the shadows, trying to work my way across the city to a place where there was a person who might have the medicine we needed and would give it freely. I wasn't deep enough in the shadows. I was caught. I was dragged to think of it not as a prison the way you envision the prisons of today, but a wooden stockade, a wooden fence with walls so high I could not climb. And I was thrown inside. I was very angry. My mother, she is sick. They slammed the gate shut. I yelled. I shouted. I yelled out at my need. My mother will die. Now, she wasn't that sick. She was not going to die. She was uncomfortable. Finally, after 2 or 3 hours, exhausted, I fell to the ground and fell into a sleep. Something extraordinary happened. I woke up from that sleep to find myself covered with a hide of a blanket, a nice warm covering. And beside me, where I slept, was a cup of hot tea. Immediately I was suspicious. What do they want from me? The night passed. In the morning, somebody tried to open the gate, and I charged the gate, so they slammed it again in my face. I paced around. I exhausted myself. I fell asleep. When I awakened, there was a nice breakfast next to me. And another layer, there were, how can I explain what we might have slept on? Think of the laciest end branches of the evergreen, not the hard, thick branches, but the very lacy end branches, piled high on top of each other to make a nice soft cushion. When I awakened, there was just such a cushion covered with another hide and breakfast. I was very confused. I thought these people were greedy and selfish and filled with hate. A little later that day, the gate opened again, and instead of charging it, I looked with confusion at the person who entered. He simply said, "We have taken medicine to your mother. Be at peace," and he left. I paced around the perimeter. I didn't know what to make of this. But finally, the words got through to me. They took my mother medicine. And then a bit later, the same person came in and said, "Your mother is feeling better." And gave me, not handed me, but put on the ground for me. More food, good food, better food than I had ever had in my life. 3 days passed in this way. In the corner of my blockade, there was a small latrine. Food was served regularly. I was given warm coverings. I was confused. I was curious. A different man came to the gate, one much better dressed. The others had been guards. This man came in, and he said, we did speak the same language. He said, "Are you ready to talk?" I was ready to attack him. Am I ready to talk? Why am I here? Why have you detained me? You broke the curfew. There shouldn't be a curfew. He said, "I agree. But I do not have the power to simply end the curfew." So I need your help to understand how we can get to know each other. What you call the haves and have-nots. And end the separation between us, so that all may be treated with decency. Who are you? I asked. He told me a name that I did not know. He said, I am not the head decision maker, but I have some power. And I've been offered this opportunity to come and speak to you. Will you talk with me? We talked. I expressed my outrage at him and thought he would be defensive. Instead, he nodded and said, I agree with you. You have a right to be angry. All of you people have not been treated fairly. I want to help. Why do you want to help? He said, because it hurts me when other people are abused. Are there others like you? Yes, he said. Then why are we not treated better? He said something that changed that life for me and has been a powerful insight ever since. He said, because your people are so understandably angry, that if we give a little bit, you will overwhelm and kill us. How can we find a way to support each other with peace so that we can give you what we would like to give you, bring you into the realm of the haves? Knowing that as soon as I open my door to you, you won't come in and murder me. We sat down and talked about it. Remember, I was just a 17-year-old boy. I asked, why me? He said, because you have been observed, and you have a loving heart. How? They had seen that while others raged at them, you could see the body language, that I met people's eyes. I didn't smile, but I met people's eyes. If I was willing to meet their eyes, I was willing to have them meet my eyes. I was willing to communicate with them. How to proceed? I asked him to let me choose friends to come and talk. Just a few. He said they would let me go, and 3 days later, I was to show up in front of the stockade with my friends. I said, how can I guarantee them that we're not all going to be imprisoned or killed? Trust. We took each other's hands and said to each other, thank you. Thank you for this start at understanding. I had to think very carefully what friends to invite. I decided mostly young ones, but I also brought my father, who I felt had an open heart and was not consumed by hatred. I won't go into the details. You don't need that. Only gradually. When we met, he had a few people with him. And then the next meeting, there were a half dozen of my friends and half dozen of his. And then a dozen of each. And we talked about a plan. We acknowledged the extremity of fear and teachers on both sides. We devised a plan. You don't need to know all the details. It would take too long to explain it. Simply said, these people that I called the haves began to, the core of the plan involved when they had a meal, instead of throwing us the garbage, that they would set a table in front of their house and bring out an equal portion of the good food, set it out and make it known, you are welcome. Come and eat at my table. Not get inside the house. We would have been terrified to go inside their house, but to sit in front of the house, to eat at their table. Thus, they began to share their food with us and other things. They gave us books and teachers to teach the children how to read. We had a common religion. They opened the doors to their houses of worship. They did not seat us at the back, but anywhere we wished to sit. At first we came into the back. Yes, some people were angry, filled with hate. How dare they come in? And they were simply told, if you don't like it, don't come. It didn't cure all the bigotry. It didn't cure all the centuries of hatred. It was a start. That's all one can do. But by the time I was a 60-year-old man rather than a 16-year-old boy, these distinctions between have and have not had largely fallen away. And beings of my class were able to get an education, to work in any work for which they were qualified. And we began to have friends, mingled among the castes. I know historically that it was another 100 years before the caste system completely dissolved in that country. So I didn't live to see that. But it happened. And it happened because they were able to offer me something, and I was able to soften my heart around my outrage enough to say, thank you. I don't credit myself for having done this. It took many, many people. But every change has to start somewhere. And one moment of gratitude, sincere gratitude, and meeting the other's eyes, really sharing your gaze with that person, can change everything. So that's my first story. Thank you. The second story. Not very different in its essence, but very different in its storyline. My people were fishermen. We sailed closer to our own shores because we had had some run-ins with people in the islands far in the distance, a week's sail away. I was a middle-aged man sailing with my son. When I say sailing, literally sailing. Our fishing boats were sailboats. A storm came up and blew our boat across the sea. My son and I were able to cling to this wreck of a boat. We drifted up onto the beach of those we thought of as the enemy. Both of us were barely conscious. I was aware of someone grabbing me under the arms and pulling me to shore. My son also. And then, largely unconscious, but as they pulled me to shore, seeing the features of those who I thought of as the enemy, and being rescued by them, what came to my heart, of course, was thank you. The thank you took me away from the fear. Oh, my enemy, they will kill me. And perhaps it also stopped them from killing me. If I had looked at them in outrage, even in those moments of barely conscious presence, hatred, they might have killed me. Thank you. Thank you. They fed me. They helped me back into health. My son also. I was not amongst rulers. I was amongst fishermen of the other people. Again, the big word here is other. Us and the others. My son's leg was broken. They set it, putting a splint on it. They gave him herbs to help soften the pain. It was clear we could not simply sail back. To send him back would have been a death sentence. So I had about 6 weeks of enforced stay there while my son's leg healed. They fed us, and we spoke different languages. We could not communicate easily. But I taught them things that I knew about fishing. They taught me. I taught them things I knew about boat building, and they taught me. I played musical instruments. Their instruments were a bit different, but I was able to play them and taught them some of our music, and they taught me some of their music. We sang together. Thank you. Thank you. Not just thanking them, thanking the storm, thanking my son's broken leg. All of this, that changed our people's lives forever. Because once my son's leg was healed, and my, not really boat repaired, a new boat built, they asked to have 1 or 2 of their boats sail with me. They said, could I promise them safety? And I said, no, I cannot promise it, but I will try. They were now my brothers. They were not the other anymore. So we sailed back. Their boats were different than ours. My people saw my boat coming, but it was really rebuilt and more similar to theirs. Their boat's coming. They paddled out with weapons. I was in my boat with their leader. My son was in I was in my boat with their leader. My son was in one of their boats with another leader. And then a third boat. My son and I stepped in front of our new friends. They have saved our lives. They are not the enemy. Well, there were decades of killing on both sides. How do you overcome that? How do you overcome hatred and fear? How do you overcome the whole misconception of us and the other? And begin to live your deepest interconnection. When my people heard that they had saved our lives and healed my son, they said thank you. When my people welcomed these people, they said thank you. And again, we began to explore. Instead of killing each other, instead of the myths that have grown through the decades about each other, how can we live together in peace and for the highest good of all? It was not perfect. Of course it wasn't. It was easier in the second story because we were not contending with huge crowds of rulers, but simple folks like ourselves. There were far fewer differences. Trust opened with a thank you. We began to share celebrations together. It was a week's sail across the sea. But we invited them to come to a large festival we had every year, a festival of Thanksgiving. They were very moved by it. They invited us to come to a different festival. Our people began to get to know each other. When there seem to be differences, there will always be fear. And with fear, mistrust. When you open your heart to the fear and see that it's based on misconception, that all humans, all sentient beings, in fact, want the same thing, which is happiness. And that I can never be happy while you are unhappy, and vice versa. We start to overcome this us and them duality. I want to make sure we're still recording. I have time for one more story here. Next month, I'll be telling my Christmas stories, but I'm going to tell one ahead of time here. A Thanksgiving and Christmas story. From the greatest teacher of love and gratitude. This is a short story. Just a few words, just a few sentences. I think he knew what was ahead for him. He had realized that he had to make a choice, that the choice had really been made already at the time of his birth, coming into this earth, as it was in those days. He did not come to live, he came to love. He would live as long as he lived. But remember, he was also a human at this time. He knew he would die in a cruel way. He knew there would be pain. And he loved life. He was more alive than anybody I ever knew. He loved his life. He loved life itself. So this is some weeks before his final days, when I had a chance to walk and be with him. And I asked him, "Are you afraid?" He said, "Yes. I do not want this, but I accept it." I said, "How can you accept it if you don't want it?" He said, "I have been given an opportunity to teach love. Teaching love will involve suffering. If I only look with fear at the suffering, how can I teach love? But when I say thank you to the opportunity that is being given to me, and I don't know how it will work out." He understood how it would probably turn out, but he did not know for certain how it would turn out. He said, "All I can do is say thank you for this birth and the chance to teach love, to ask people to move beyond fear, to show them how to move beyond fear, and to teach love, to share love in my own being, and to show that there is always a choice. No matter how afraid, no matter how uncomfortable or in pain, there is always the choice for love. And for that," he said, "for that I am overwhelmingly grateful." So I saw that this was his strength, at least one of his strengths. He had many of us. But this strength to feel gratitude. Someone asked me once, did I think he felt gratitude while he hung there dying on the cross? I cannot answer that. I know he did not feel hatred. I know he did not feel fear. Thank you for listening to me. Next month we'll have more Christmas stories. Perhaps Yeshua will also come in and talk directly. All right, I have a question for you. When you sit down at your Thanksgiving table next week with Uncle Joe or Grandpa, Grandma, Sally, or whoever it may be, and they start talking in ways that are upsetting to you, perhaps supporting the political candidate to whom you're dramatically opposed, how are you going to feel grateful? Give me some of your thoughts on this before I offer suggestions. Thank you for sharing, David says. Thank you for sharing. And if he says, but I'm right, I wouldn't take it that far. David said, if he says, yes, but I'm right, he said, yes, you are. I love you and hold the right for us to have different opinions. But you're wrong. Well, we have different opinions. I think I'm right and you think I'm wrong. And I think we can have different opinions. I still love you. And then change the subject. Any comments, any additions to that? What will you do with Uncle Joe? I think what I'm after is, how do we get to thank you? When there's when you feel yourself pushed and there's a strong tension, how do you bring awareness to the power of that tension and release it instead of building stories about it? How do you truly feel compassion for Uncle Joe, who is so deeply caught in his own fears and prejudices? Listening. Mimi has said, I refuse to fight. And what if Uncle Joe says, I'm not going to let you off the hook that easily?
Go somewhere else.
You're so wrong. This man is by far the best president we've ever had, and you have to support him. I refuse to fight. How do we deal with this? I think from me, I hear that this is what you feel, and you're entitled to have your feelings. I cannot argue about your feelings, and you cannot argue about my feelings. If you like the color red, and I like the color, this was a subconscious choice of you like the color red and I like the color blue. If you like the color yellow and I like the color green, can we agree that you like the color yellow and I like the color green? I don't have to convince you to like green. You don't have to convince me to like yellow. Can we just make peace with that? So this is really refusing to fight, yes. It's refusing to get caught up in the stories that the person is trying to push on. And they will push stories on you. You're stupid, you're wrong, you're going to destroy the country, blah, blah, blah. I hear that this is how you feel. I respect your opinion. I respect your right to your own view. Period. Now, given this dramatic dialogue, can you feel the tension? Next step is you don't have to do it out in the open so Uncle Joe sees you. Quietly. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to deepen harmony, to step aside from such fierce antagonism, to soften the antagonism. Thank you. How we not only step out of that, but do so in a way that has a possibility to strengthen healing and connection, to help people hear each other, even while they disagree. I like the quote, we agreed to disagree agreeably. Find common ground and focus on the values. Focus on what we both want rather than methods. Establish common goals. Excellent. Rita says, take a deep breath and say, I hear your opinion. Now I would like you to hear my opinion. Mimi says, it really calms down my hyperpartisan uncle. I would guess that the hyperpartisan uncle, when you say I would like you to hear my opinion, would say, no, your opinion is stupid. Okay, I hear your opinion.
Thank you for the opportunity to deepen my practice of forgiveness.
He will probably punch you if you say that. But just thank you. Can you hear the subtle anger that's coming out in that last statement?
Smart
Dig,
Alex.
dig, dig. How do I make peace in any situation? By truly inviting a situation where people feel safe to hear each other. You cannot create a safe situation unless you look deeply at your own anger and resistance and are willing to take a risk of truly hearing the other. Truly hearing. I doubt very much if these two sides can, if either one side or the other is going to say, oh, you changed my mind, I embrace your candidate. It's not about that. The election will show who is favored. The question is, can there be the foundation for making peace? Which comes when you stop armoring yourself, open your energy field and become vulnerable. And you can do that through gratitude, that the other is there and willing to give you a chance to practice, although you don't say that to his face. Just, I hear you. We can disagree. It doesn't change my affection for you. I've always had loving cats. Things have changed now. I've always had loving cats. Things have changed now. My 4 cats, can you still hear me when my back is turned to the microphone? My 4 cats fight between themselves. Today they were fighting while waiting as I prepared their food. I realized how I loved each one of them, even though they were caught up in their self-centered patterns. Then I realized I needed to apply that to people when resistance comes up, to how they are to me and each other. Realizing how people are caught in dukkha and are suffering helps me to have compassion and patience. Beautifully said, Celeste. Thank you. Conflict comes out of fear. Hearing another can help reduce that fear. Again, beautifully said. Thank you. I said at the beginning that you are here on Earth to help raise the whole vibrational frequency of the Earth, to create an Earth that is much more positively polarized and full of love. These quote conflict situations, I put a quote about it because at some level it's not conflict, it's just practice situations. These situations give you the chance, as Jim just said, to return again and again to the loving heart and to observe what blocks the opening of that loving heart. Celeste, acknowledging a person's pain usually helps them feel heard and releases their tension. It is important to find a way to get into their emotions without trying to fix their emotions. Yes. Just acknowledging, hearing. Deep listening is one of the greatest gifts. I have a landlord who was very sensitive. We had nice conversations and were becoming friends. That all changed when I told him I was unhappy with him over lack of repairs and is leaving on vacation in the middle of a construction project in my apartment. He went nuclear and tried to evict me. When you speak your truth, that's no guarantee that others can hear it. Thank you for sharing that, Mimi. I think in that situation, well, that trying to evict is hard. It doesn't give you much time. But I would give it a couple of days to settle down and see if I could reapproach him, saying, you've done so much and you're such a nice person, and I'm sorry I hurt your feelings with what sounded like criticism. I did need these things fixed. I still do. But I also appreciate you very much. That might or might not allow him to reopen his heart. Well, if he won't talk to you, perhaps bake him a pie. And tell him you appreciate him and all the good he has done as a landlord. That's a hard one. The response would differ from one person to another, and depending on your relationship with the person. From my perspective, depending on your relationship, if it's possible to speak, if you're going to be at a Thanksgiving dinner together, before you sit down at the table, or if it's someone you see and can speak to earlier in the week, you can simply note, I understand this holiday must be very painful for you. Please know that I hold you in my heart. Just that. You can offer, if you're having the dinner together with family, if there's any way I can be of help, let me know. But other than that, not to ignore them, but not to put them on the stage. Oh, how are you doing? This must be hard, not there at the table. But a few words before can go a long way toward helping that person to feel supported through what will certainly be a challenging time. When we speak to the other as self, what would it help me to hear in this situation where I'm caught in my grief, in my fear, etc.? What would help me? That's probably what will help the other. But not long dialogues with it. Just, I hear you, or I know this is hard for you. I care about you. I love you. Even just a hug. May you have a blessed Thanksgiving, whether it's with loved ones, neighbors, even alone with a dog or cat. May your heart be open and filled with the joy that is the true meaning of this time of year. Can you feel joy at this opportunity? You volunteered. Here you are, having an opportunity literally to change the vibration of this earth by finding the ways that support you to keep your heart open, even when the other person is belligerent or the situation is painful. This is why you came. And if you don't do it, quote, right, don't despair. Just say, well, I goofed. I got caught up in the anger. Go take a little walk. Have a glass of wine or a bottle of Coke. Relax. Another turkey leg. Relax. Try again. The wonderful thing about incarnation is you get more and more and more chances. No matter how many times the door slams shut, you have the opportunity to come back into your heart and open it again. Thank you. May the blessings of this season be on you. May you have joy and peace. I'm going to release the body to Barbara. Good night to all of you online. Thank you, Eric.